Everybody, welcome back to another episode of Manufacturing Stream Podcast. I'm really happy for you to join us this week. We got a special episode, but before we get into that, I want to say hi to the two guys that I have in the studio with me. We have Jim Mayer and Eric Whitley once again. Thanks again for joining us. Really appreciate it. I'm going to have both of you give a little introduction. Tell us about yourself, maybe a little bit about your relationship to the manufacturing world, and then we can go ahead and dive in because we got a special thing planned today. L2L just released their 2025 manufacturing skills report, which is a really cool piece of data, and we're going to dive a bit into that today, and we're going to get some great almost cold reactions from these guys on some really incredible and some kind of mind-blowing stats from the manufacturing world. Before we get started, I'll have you guys say hi.
All right. Well, my name is Jim Mayer. I have a company called the Manufacturing Connector. I create podcasts. I write articles, blogs. I help companies with their company culture, their employee engagement, their leadership development, their change management through assessments, through workshops. And I've been in the industry for about 25 years at this point in various forms.
Eric Whitley, I think everybody listening probably knows, director of in manufacturing solutions now, and moved over into kind of a different role a little bit. Have been with L2L for, gosh, I'm going in my 12th year now. And so excited to do that. Been in manufacturing ever since I was sweeping the floors and washing the machines at McDonnell Douglas, working on the C-17 aircraft and MD-11 there. So been in manufacturing a while, and yeah, glad to be here.
Fantastic. So, I've also started asking people their favorite color. Eric, I think I can say that yours might be green.
Well, today it's coincidental, but actually, could be. I don't really have a favorite color. I just, as long as it's a color that's on a race car, it's a good color. That's really kind of the standard.
That's the entire rainbow then. It's been my icebreaker. I don't think I need to break the ice quite as much with y'all, but now I can't leave you out, Jim. What's your favorite color?
It's the weirdest favorite color that anybody could have, man. My favorite color is brown.
Excellent.
Which is not something you hear too often, but
no.
I love like wood. I love bark of trees. I love leather. And yeah, if I had to pick a favorite color, it would definitely be brown.
I feel like you would have done really well in the 70s. Everything was brown.
I would have rocked it in the 70s. I would have done very well in the 70s.
Excellent. Cool. So enough of that. Let's talk about this 2025 manufacturing skills report. It's a really cool document. We did something similar last year, and we had a great success with it. A lot of people found it really interesting. I think it's an absolutely fascinating exercise. So what we did is, everybody in this industry, we always consult the Deloittes and the Gartners and the McKinseys of the world, right, to get all of these big data points about the manufacturing industry and about how things are going. But we think that it's also really cool if we conduct our own research. So we also partnered with a data agency, and we did kind of our own deep dive into something that we're really passionate about, which is manufacturing skills and kind of getting into that growing labor crisis that we're seeing all around the world, and trying to get some good data on that issue and hearing from the people who are actually working on the ground day to day in manufacturing. So we talked to 600 people who are from all over the place. We have a really big spread of ages. I don't know if you guys got a chance to look at the age range, but we have 55% of the people responded on that 29 to 44 age bracket, which didn't surprise me. 27% reporting from 45 to 60, but 14% are in that 18 to 28 age bracket, which to me, I guess it shouldn't seem remarkable, but I'm like, wow, there's a lot of Gen Zers coming into the manufacturing workforce now.
Yeah. I mean, they're now called the trades generation, I think, is one
Really?
of the newspaper headlines over here. And this is post-pandemic. This is post you know, multiple economic crises. These young people have seen a lot as far as policies being made, as far as uh parents, you know, not having enough to retire. They've seen multiple, like I said, economic crises. They've seen a global, you know, pandemic, and going to college for them isn't necessarily their path.
Yeah.
So we're starting in the US here, we're starting to see this growing trend of people bucking the trades, or bucking that college pathway and going into the trades. Um, and so when I'd actually like to say that I'm shocked that it's not larger.
Yeah.
But I think that's some of the issues we have. And Eric, you may have a different take on this. I think that's some of the issues that we have on the apprenticeship side of manufacturing, where we're making it too long of an apprenticeship to get too long of a runway to get people to manufacturing ready, money making ready in their early careers. Take it away, Eric.
Yeah, I guess, I'll just kind of make it a little personal here. It was Easter weekend here a couple weekends ago, and was around the family, and have nieces and nephews who are in manufacturing. Frontline supervisor, operator on the shop floor, talking about, here you have some Gen Zers who are making a living. They are in manufacturing now and able to have a good steady job that they can go to every day. They can make a decent wage. I still think it needs to get better along that lines, but you look around and you look at their peers who are coming, like you said, Jim, coming out of college with a degree that they can't use. They're not making a living. They're trying to make ends meet. And I think they're starting to look at these positions and these jobs and say, God, I
Yeah.
look around, I see my friends who are doing fairly decent. How do I do that as well? So
Mhm.
I do. I'm with you. I see it changing as well.
There's an interesting number here in this report. 36% of these 600 respondees have a bachelor's degree, and
Yeah.
14% of the respondees have a master's degree. So
Yeah.
that is a significant chunk of these people have gone and gotten a bachelor's and then gotten into the manufacturing industry. I also think it's worth mentioning that 44%, almost half of the people engaging with these questions and with this data are in the production and operations side. And so I think that's a pretty key demographic part. Is a lot of the people responding here are on the front line, doing turning wrenches and working day to day on in a production environment as well. So I think that's an interesting data set.
Chris, one thing that scared me is the years employed in the industry.
Mm,
And when you, so 25% 3 to 5 years, 25% 6 to 10 years, 16% 11 to 15 years,
yeah,
and little dip for that 16 to 20, but double digits again for the more than 20 years. Less than 1 year and 1 to 2 years, you had a combined 11%. So that to me shows that we have we don't have enough people
yeah,
who are starting, right? Those young people have been in the trades for 3 to 5 years at this point, right?
yeah,
We So to me, that is a terrifying signal that all the work that we're doing to fill this pipeline for skilled
yeah,
trades, for apprenticeship programs, for X, Y, and Z, it's still something isn't grabbing people for manufacturing, right?
yeah.
And so I would love to, and now I'm going to hyper focus on this until I find out what other skilled trades are seeing. as far as their percentage of that one less than a year and 1 to 2 years,
Yeah.
and how is that correlation? What does that correlation look like? Sorry to interrupt. I just thought that when I was looking
No.
through this last yesterday or a couple days ago, that was one thing that really jumped out at me is, oh my, that's very concerning. That's troubling.
Yeah, it's I think I talked about this on the podcast here a few weeks ago as well, that what is troubling about that for me is that not only is it not filling the pipeline for manufacturing folks, but it's not filling the pipeline for manufacturing leaders as well, right?
Yeah.
Because your leaders, and I always make this point to my sales guys, I say, listen, 99% of the VP of operations you're going to talk to were on the shop floor at one point in time. Okay. So you can talk shop floor stuff to this VP of operations because that person knows exactly what the operator is going through, because at 30 years ago, 20 years ago, they were an operator. That's how it
Yeah.
works. They were an engineer, they were a mechanic, whatever it was, they were. So if we're not bringing in young talent early on, then what's going to happen, and maybe this is what we're seeing now, is that you're going to see 10 years down the road is that the pool of natural leaders that are going to lead manufacturing organizations are not being brought in, where the pool is just less than what we need in order to get full strength inside the leadership of manufacturing.
Yeah. I think that's a great segue to start kind of talking about some of these skills specific issues. So my idea today was to confront the two of you with some of these bigger statistics from this report and get your take on it. I haven't spent a fraction of the time that y'all have in the manufacturing industry. So I'd love to hear from some experts on some of these statistics. Are you surprised? Does it seem par for the course? And maybe we can start to unpack some of the deeper meanings behind them. Start with one that you're probably familiar with and that actually seems a little bit low to me. And that's 67% of manufacturing professionals say they've observed a growing skills gap. And I think that given some of the other information in this report, I think 67% sounds almost low, doesn't it? The fact that 33% of people out there are saying, no, I don't see a skills gap. I don't have that. I haven't encountered that. That almost seems remarkable to me.
Go ahead, Eric. But yes.
Yeah, I the thing, and I thought about a lot about this, is that the skills gap, in manufacturing, there is this level of competency, I guess is the best way for me to explain it. And what I mean by that is that if you go, and I've been using this analogy lately, it doesn't matter if you're making cookies or if you're making cars. In both of those situations in manufacturing, there's about 80% of the job that's the same.
Yeah.
So you can go from the cookie company to the car company and possess the same skill sets in order to do that. If the cookie company does a better job of capturing all 80% of those skills, then they are ahead of the game, and so they're really probably not seeing the skills gap. Now,
Yeah.
if you've never worked in manufacturing, there's going to be a skills gap. But if you're moving around inside of manufacturing, as a lot of people are doing, you can transfer that knowledge of skills of how to run a piece of equipment, how to follow a standard work, right? Those things are standard within whether you're making cookies or you're making cars. And so
Yeah.
I mean, I can kind of understand where there's a larger number of people are saying, no, I'm really not seeing it, because they're getting people who know how to be in manufacturing regardless of what they make.
Interesting. Yeah, it was because there's one more statistic that I'll throw out there to kind of explain my line of thinking, and that's this one that says that 50% of manufacturing jobs this year are going to go unfilled due to a lack of skilled candidates. And when I look at those two numbers together, it seems to me that there is a piece of information mixing. If we're saying 50% of open roles are unfilled, and yet only 67% of people are acknowledging the fact that there's a present skills gap, then it seems that maybe the way that we're defining skills or thinking about being a skilled employee is different or changing. I'm curious about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to how we train people
Mm,
also, right? And how we get them ready for the shop floor.
yeah,
I think it goes to how we look at, is somebody ready to take on a job, right? We talk about these skills matrix, and production scheduling has these skills matrix. Have we trained Joe on this process? Yes, okay, then he's green, he can run that job,
yeah,
right? And we're not necessarily ensuring that we've done anything other than provide a training which somebody can test really well on, right?
yeah,
Or complete a workshop, or whatever it may be. Um, so I think that, yes, I get that, people with that we don't have 50% of our jobs filled, right? I think that 67% seems about right, because I think the other 33% is probably just happy with status quo,
yeah,
or not happy with the industry in general, right? And so they're kind of looking through it from a different lens, a different
mm,
perspective. The parts that concern me are, uh, do we have a skills gap? And I think going back to that uh stat that I called out earlier, 11% under 2 years in the industry, right? um so that could be where part of that growing skills gap is coming from, as well as we
yeah,
just don't have as many young people coming into the industry.
The other thing too is, and I don't want to get ahead of you here, Chris, but there was a lot of information in the report that talked about the soft skills.
yeah,
And one of the things, the skills gap, you can bring in a new person. You can have all the standards in the world that shows them how to put widget A into the machine, and you're going to get this. And this is how it all works when everything runs well. But when it doesn't go well, do they have the
yeah,
skill to troubleshoot? Do they have the skill to understand when the product quality is bad? I think this is where you may see a lot of the frustration with inside of the skills gap, is because it's not it's not that I can't run the machine when the machine is supposed to run. Listen, when the machine's supposed to run, all I have to do is show up and push the green button, and the
yeah,
thing runs and spits parts out the other end, right? I got to fill the hopper. I have to watch it, make sure. I have to do some SBC testing. All that stuff is great. But when things go south, do I have the ability to react to that, to troubleshoot, to figure out the problem solve, all of
yeah,
that? Those are skills that only experience brings with inside of manufacturing. I can come in and set the place up in order to where it runs perfectly when everything is good. But when things go south, I've got to have experienced people there. I've got to have people who know what to do.
yeah.
And just to keep building on that, if that's okay, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to throw some numbers out there too, because I think we have that in the report to support exactly what Eric just said, but I'll let you go.
Yeah, as a Zennial, right? That Gen X millennial cusp, we historically have not been the most ambitious of generations or subset of generations. We have looked at the generations older than us and used them as a crutch for critical thinking, for that technical troubleshooting, for those kinds of
Right.
skills
Yeah.
out on the shop floor. And now they're no longer there. And so I think that,
Yeah.
just from my personal experience, I think that's where a lot of this skills gap may lie, is actually with some of the older people that may be now asked to be that mentor, that leader on the shop floor that don't have that skill set, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know, Eric, you could have a different take on that. Chris, you could have a different take, but I see a lot of people my generation, my age, just not having step up because we didn't have to. We looked at the older generation and they had to work longer than any other generation previous to them, right? Because of, again, multiple economic collapses and things that prevented people from being able to retire at a certain age. And so we've used them as crutches, and so that technical expertise, that how to get the press back up and running, that missed us. We didn't absorb that. We just let it go. And so now we're losing that knowledge from
Yeah.
organizations all over the place. Hit us with your numbers. I apologize.
Well,
I
no, now
ranted.
I'm on a tangent too. I mean, that was back when I worked at Swipe Guide. I mean, that was one of our number one goals is how do we codify and preserve that silent knowledge, we called it. And it's just, somebody said it, at 5 p.m. on a Friday, 90% of the knowledge in your company walks out the front door. And you better hope they
Yep,
come back, right?
absolutely.
And so that was something that we tried to do. It was capture that before it left, because we saw people starting to panic. Is man, all of these great things that just live in people's heads and get passed around word of mouth aren't being written down and shared with that 2% that's been on the job for less than a year. And I think that's remarkable. I wanted to share one statistic here, which is that we also asked people about missing skills. What skills have you seen missing on the factory floor? And I think a lot of them are kind of what Eric started talking about, the ones that you can learn. Equipment maintenance, leadership and team coordination, technical troubleshooting, quality control, these are all under 50%. But 55% of respondents cited communication skills as that is the highest reported missing skill from this list and from this report, and that's a soft skill. I mean, the data is there. It's right in front of us. These soft skills and this, just like you were saying, Eric, the ability to talk about what is going wrong when it does go wrong, when it all hits the fan. It's the people themselves are saying, hey, we don't have this, we don't see it. My question is, we can talk about upskilling and training, but I also think it's important to talk about how do you build soft skills, at least for a moment here. We have a lot of great information about supporting frontline teams with tech, and boosting people with better tools and better resources at their disposal. I think there's a very clear use case for using tech to improve some of these other hard skills that you see. But how do we leverage new resources to boost soft skills? Perhaps is my question.
Go ahead,
Well,
Jim.
I was just going to ask Chris, is there data on how different this is from the last one that you guys did? Is there a change in
10%?
Wow.
10%. It was 45%.
Wow.
45% of professionals last year said that they struggled with communication on the shop floor. So it's growing, which I think is remarkable. And I'm kind of wondering what those factors are that contribute to that change.
Yeah, I think that. Go ahead, Eric.
Go ahead.
I interrupted you last time. This is your turn.
in my brain, the way that I think about this communication thing is that if somebody asks a question and the answer contains 500 words, right? My job as the leader is to communicate these 500 words of information in order to help them solve the problem or answer the question or whatever. If the tech can reliably substitute 250 of those words, if you will. We're doing a little math here, but so that as a leader, I only have to know 250, but the tech can help answer those questions. If it can provide me with the information I need, if it can give me answers to listen, the topic that we've got to talk about here when it comes to this question is, what role is AI going to play
Yep.
in manufacturing, where an operator can chat with the chatbot and get the answer to the questions that they need, and making sure that that information is inside of there. If
Yeah.
that can help replace, back to the leadership issue, if that can help replace some of the gap in that leadership, then that's really where it's going to start to, where tech is going to help with this process. Listen, we
Yep.
all know, we all go to dinner and we sit around and see people sitting around a table and they're all got their faces in their phone instead of with each other. We all
Yeah.
know that's how people communicate these days,
Yeah.
so.
Absolutely.
And I think that it's, the education system has done a fairly good job of meeting kids where they're at,
Good.
as far as teaching them skills, right? And meeting
Yeah.
them where they're at. They're providing technology, they're doing these things. I know that as a parent of a 14-year-old, I had to download Snapchat. I have one friend on, two friends. My wife and my daughter are my only friends on Snapchat. But that's how my daughter chooses to communicate. When before I downloaded Snapchat, it was sparse. It was like pulling teeth to get her to send a text message to
Yeah.
me,
Wow.
which a generation ago was like the new thing, right? And people were saying, why don't you just pick up the phone? Now it's not even pick up the phone. It's not even texting. It's, I send a pictorial shot on Snapchat of how I'm feeling at any given moment. And once I adopted Snapchat and learned how to communicate with her at the place that she wanted to, the communication got better. If that's how she wants to communicate, that's how she wants to communicate, right?
Yeah.
So I think part of this statistic, maybe without having any quantifiable, data or
Yeah.
qualifiable data behind it, it may be that the people who are saying that the 55% this communication skills are lacking could be of a generation, of a mindset, of uh, uh an age where they're saying, this is how I communicate and they're not doing it, right? And so that could be lacking. And that could be of any age. That could be the younger generation that's in there saying, I don't feel like I'm communicated with at a level that I want to be reached at. It could be my age and older saying, these young whippersnappers these days don't know how to even send a text message, right? I don't know how to qualify the data that you've provided us
Yeah.
right now, in that 55%, but I know that when we meet people where they're at
Yeah.
and we level set expectations, that changes the game.
Yeah.
So I think that when companies are looking at implementing systems, talk to the people who will be the future as well as the people who are the present, right? And not that I want to make this a L2L sales pitch or anything, but I think that that's one thing that L2L does well. I think that's one thing that Swipe Guide did well, was it provided a platform that was a middle ground for multiple generations who wanted and needed to learn how to communicate with each other, right? It
Common
provides
denominator.
it is a common denominator. And feel free to cut this out because this isn't a sales pitch. But I that's just my take. Eric, Chris, you may have a different take.
Well, I mean, that is the challenge, right? For manufacturers, that is the challenge. How do you get new people? And this, it's always been this challenge. It, it listen, 1984, I'm at McDonnell Douglas, and I can remember one of the older gentlemen telling me, you know what I learned today? I learned that this right here is what's called a CRT, a cathode ray tube. And this is a computer. And I learned that today, you know?
Wow.
So we, yeah, I can remember a guy telling me, listen, I just went and bought a new chip for my computer. It's like 124 K of memory. I don't know that I'm ever going to use that 124K. I think I'm going to take it back and get my money back, you know? And so, I mean, you know, that's, but that's the challenge of
Yeah.
manufacturing is to cater to everybody within inside
Yeah.
of the spectrum of the
Yeah.
employees that you have out on the shop floor, and make sure that everybody can do the job. Listen, the fact of the matter is that every manufacturer, the bottom line is can you put product out the back door at a low cost in a safe environment with good quality, right?
Yeah.
That's it. That's all we're concentrated on. Let's don't fool ourselves. That's what we want to do in manufacturing. That's what
Yeah.
we're here for. That's what we want to do. We just have to get everybody on board and be able to give everybody the right tools at any point in time within their life cycle in order to do that. And
Yeah.
so that's upon us as software developers, isn't that really our challenge as well? How do we have a product that can do what Jim was talking about? Have the 18 to 24-year olds go, yeah, this is cool. And then have the 50 to 60-year-old maintenance guy who, you know, has cracks in the fingertips and grease under their fingernails go, yeah, I'll use this. This is good. And, you know,
Yeah.
and have that all work in between there as well. That's the challenge.
I think I'm gonna have to skip ahead to a different statistic because I don't want to say it so bad. Because it's one of my favorite ones here. And that is of all of these people, of all these age ranges, of all these experience ranges, 81% of people said that they are at least somewhat prepared to welcome AI and automation into their lives and to use it. And I thought that was a remarkably high number. I would have told you, "Hey, look at these skills gaps, look at these communications gaps, look at these unfilled jobs. We're we're backwards, we're unprepared." And then you actually talk to the people and you ask them if they're at least somewhat willing to use this and welcome it into their work life, and 81% of people say yes, which I think is really cool. 75% of people say it's going to simplify and accelerate their processes. 73% say it's going to improve their analytics, and so on and so forth down this list. People understand that this stuff works, which I think is cool and is hopeful. And you know, I know at L2L we have a bunch of stories of people who are pretty curmudgeonly about new software for a day, and then they see it work and their job gets easier, and then they say, "Oh, holy cow, that is kind of a revelation." So I think that there is some hope there. And as you said, this is an ongoing trend, right? Like people, there is always adaptation that needs to be done across generations and across skills. And I think we're at a bit of a crux right now, as things are accelerating and we're getting things like AI, where okay, it's time to figure out how to upskill and incorporate this into people's lives. So that's my soapbox moment.
That was great.
I think that I think that over the past, and I'm going to say just a year, maybe that's probably the timeline. Many of us at all ages
Yeah.
are our fear wall, if you will, of AI has been moved,
Yeah.
erased, or taken down, mainly because we use it every day. The other thing too is that it, excuse me. The other thing too is that the technology has gotten to the point where you're seeing AI in use, but in very simple and
Yes.
practical applications. It's a simple thing like giving the maintenance mechanic the 3 top possible spare parts that they may are going to use for this job and knowing
Yeah.
what job they're on. Very practical applications. And so that's breaking down the barrier. People going, okay, I'm not so afraid of this thing as I was a year or 2 years ago because I just didn't know, right? And now I'm seeing the practical application.
I had the same conversation yesterday with Willemine, actually. We've moved this needle of, okay, we've heard what AI could do a year ago, and now we've seen what AI can do. I've definitely had my moment of coming to terms with that, where it's like, no, actually, most of what this does is simplify a workflow.
Mhm.
And I think it's the same application in manufacturing, and we got to
Yeah.
get people just to use it.
I think it's all about providing uh, employees with the WIFM, right? The
Mm,
what's in it for me.
yeah,
And once they understand what's in it for them, they're going to let down their guard. They're going to absorb a little bit more information. But then to Eric's point, and to your point, Chris, then they have to see the proof in the pudding. Man, I'm using a lot of cliches. I
it's
apologize.
great. I love it. I
Um,
welcome it.
and once they're told what's in it for them and they see that actually come to fruition, that disarms them, that
Yeah.
takes down. I had an interview this last winter, where I asked a AI expert about uh whether AI will take jobs, and he said absolutely not. He said, what will take jobs are people who learn to adapt and use AI. He said this is no different than when computers hit, offices, when CNC machines hit shop floors. It wasn't the CNC machine that took jobs. It was the manual machinist who learned how to use a CNC machine that took the job of somebody who couldn't, right? And so I look at AI and automation, but specifically AI through that lens is we have to we have to adopt. We have to
Yeah.
adapt it. And it's not going away.
So the last thing I want to touch on today is, okay, so we know that AI and tech in general and better skills tools and just simplifying that common denominator, we know that that has a potential to help address the skills gap, right? If we make training better, if we make people's lives easier, if we change the way that we're delivering training materials and making upskilling better, that's all well and good. We know that better tools on the factory floor help people learn and gain more skills to close this skills gap. I want to end on a statistic that I can only call bonkers. I've been saying the word bonkers for like 3 days because that's what this statistic makes me think of. Is that 48% of people in this survey say that their companies offer upskilling programs. 48%. That's less than half. I don't even want to say the big numbers again, but we know what this gap is doing. We know how many jobs are unfilled. We know how many people are retiring in the next 5 years. We know this brewing storm is happening, and yet only half the companies out there are actually investing in upskilling. That seems wild to me. Is there an explanation that makes that number make sense, or is it truly that big of a gap?
I wonder if it's the pipeline issue,
Mm,
right? I wonder if it's just that the people who are in charge of upskilling don't have the capability
yeah,
and don't have the knowledge to upskill,
yeah,
right? Or they just don't have the resources or infrastructure set up to upskill. Not necessarily that they're just not doing it. They just don't know how to do it.
yeah,
They don't have the technology. They don't, right? It's listen, if you don't have, and I know this from personal experience, if you don't have a system in place, it is arduous to put an operator certification process in
yeah,
place that starts to upskill people with inside of your plant. And it takes months and months to set that system up. Now, luckily, technology has kind of helped with that. But if you don't have it, it's not easy to start. You just don't go, I'm going to upskill today and start doing it.
Yeah,
It takes,
absolutely.
it takes a lot of resources and a lot of horsepower, a lot of dedication from capturing standards and all of that in order to start
Yeah,
and get that going. So,
it's an
and
investment.
again, yeah, and I go back to if and if 50% of the time, the statistics say, if a plant manager has a chance to use a resource to put more product out the back door or to set up an operator certification process, I
They're
guarantee
going to
what they're
choose
going to do is
product
they're choose product. They're
every
gonna.
single time.
So
I
every
think,
time.
yeah, something that Willemine said was that a lot of time people are just putting out fires too. They are so stressed out with their day to day and just making sure things
Mhm.
go smoothly. They're solving the problem that is immediately in front of them,
Yep. That's
and
exactly
by
it.
that I mean at their fingertips, not a skill issue or a staffing issue or something like that. So
Yeah.
it just gets bumped down on priority, and yeah, I guess it makes sense then that this is a growing problem.
It is, and I mean, the old adage was that 3 to 5% of your total payroll should go to professional development, right? And I don't think that that still exists within the manufacturing skilled trades
Yeah,
ecosystem anymore. I look at opportunities that people have, and maybe there is a lack of opportunities, especially on the skills, the soft skills side,
yeah.
to actually provide that professional development. I don't know if there's really good platforms to do that. So maybe it's an availability issue
Yeah,
as
definitely.
well. Um, so it was a bonkers stat, man, and uh bonkers encapsulates that perfectly. It blew my
Thank you,
mind.
Jim.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I went down a whole rabbit hole of, well, is this real? Like,
Yeah.
and it's wild how real this is. And yeah, so I think that's one of the things. If I had to say, we need to work on as an industry, it's that professional development. It's tying performance management to the skills needed to get better and really provide those pathways for employees.
All right, everybody. Unfortunately, we are at time. We could talk about this for hours and hours and hours. I do not doubt it. But I'm going to have to say goodbye to these two gentlemen. And once again, thanks for being on this program. And thank you for watching. Make sure you go check out the 2025 skills report that we just published. If you go to l2l.com, it's available in the banner at the top of the screen. Very simple. Just go ahead and download it. There's a lot more statistics, a lot more great stuff in there. So until next time, hope you enjoy that report, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.